Bloomington, Indiana, October 1945. 13-month-old Deborah Skinner makes newsreel headlines and brings her father to national attention as the man who keeps his baby in a box. The so-called box was actually a climate-controlled crib. Young psychologist B.F. Skinner had invented a combination bed and playpen to keep his daughter protected and comfortable. Filtered air and a removable base made it hygienic and healthy, so she never suffered a cold or infection. Temperature and humidity could be adjusted, and with no need of clothes or blankets, Deborah could exercise freely without risk of smothering. She was so content, she never cried. Public reaction to the air crib foreshadowed what was to happen with almost all of B.F. Skinner's ideas.
I got hundreds of letters. Where can we get these? And then somehow or other, the attitude changed, and the rumors began to go out that I kept a child in a cage. And I still get inquiries. Did you keep your child in a cage? And also, of course, there have been all sorts of rumors about awful things that happened to her. So I'm happy to say, college-educated, happily married, very talented artist.
Skinner did not set out to be a psychologist. He graduated from college in 1926 with a degree in English and his heart set on a literary career. After a miserable year discovering that he had nothing to say, he turned instead to behavioral psychology. At Harvard, he began rat and pigeon experiments with the idea that all behavior could be understood entirely through observation. 10 years' work confirmed to Skinner the central behaviorist principle. Environment alone controls behavior. We are different from animals only because our environment is more complex. Skinner went on to devise controlled experiments for pigeons and found he could dramatically alter their behavior. The technique he called operant conditioning. An untrained pigeon behaves naturally. It pecks. If every time the bird pecks at a disc, it's rewarded, reinforced with a food pellet, it soon learns that pecking discs has pleasant consequences. Further pecking yields further reward. Once a pigeon is conditioned to operate on its environment to earn its reward, new behavior can be shaped. Since the 40s, Skinner has illustrated the role of reinforcement in learning with a now classic example, training a pigeon to turn a circle.
This hungry pigeon is moving about more or less at random. Sometimes it turns its head to the left. When it does, we reinforce that movement by giving the pigeon access to a dish of grain. Once the pigeon has been reinforced for a slight turn to the left, we can wait for it to turn a little further. By gradual steps, we can reach a stage at which the pigeon turns in a complete circle. The pigeon has learned to make the response because it has been reinforced for successive steps leading to the final pattern.
By the 50s, behavior shaping was popular in psychology labs throughout the world. From this virtuoso performance by a University of Wichita pigeon, it's clear that Skinner has changed forever the dull lives of experimental pigeons and given new meaning to the expression bird brain.
We're always controlled and always manipulated. I insist that people are controlled. But what they don't understand is that I don't believe that people control people. Environments control people.
One of Skinner's first clues that the human animal is also controlled by reinforcement was his discovery that a pigeon did not need a reward every time. He found that a pigeon will persist in pecking thousands of times to earn a single food pellet. In other words, the schedule of reinforcement could be varied.
One of the schedules which is very effective with rats or pigeons is what we call the variable ratio schedule, and that is at the heart of all gambling devices and has the same effect. The pigeon can become a pathological gambler just as a person can. Now, the fact that we found that out with pigeons and could prove it by removing and changing the schedule makes it easy for us to interpret the case with the human subject. We don't say that the human subject gambles to punish himself, as the Freudians might say, or gambles because he feels excited when he does so. Nothing of the sort. People gamble because of the schedule of the reinforcement that follows.
Not just gambling, but according to Skinner, everything we do is conditioned by the reinforcements in our environment. It's easy to see how food pellets can motivate pigeon ping-pong, but with people, the influences are harder to isolate. Like it or not, Skinner says we do not determine our own actions. We should stop probing our psyches to understand ourselves and look instead at our external behavior and the environment that has produced it. Putting this into practice, Skinner invented the teaching machine. The student moves step by step through simple to more advanced problems. With each correct answer comes the immediate reward of knowing the response is correct and the encouragement to move on to the next question. These machines are now being used to teach everything from telling the time to advanced physics. Satisfaction from achievement is a powerful human reinforcer. Operant conditioning can even be used to change the behavior of the intellectually or emotionally disabled. In the 50s, Skinner's technique was a breakthrough in teaching the handicapped functions once thought quite beyond their reach. This child is profoundly retarded. She has never walked. At first, she is asked only to shuffle between two chairs. For each effort, she is rewarded with ice cream. Gradually, the chairs are moved further apart so that she stretches to make the distance. No one coaxes or prompts her. Only the positive reinforcement of the ice cream. As shifting becomes easier, the goals are increased. Now she walks hanging onto a rope suspended for support as she goes after her reward. Later, the rope is slackened. Now she walks under her own power, even though she still holds the rope. The rope is cut and reduced in size. Still, she continues to walk to get the ice cream. If the rope is taken away, she falls. When the rope is merely a wad of string in her fist, she's able to drop it of her own accord. Now she is walking independently, all in the space of a few hours. Behavior shaping through positive reinforcement has equally powerful results with people of normal intelligence. These juvenile delinquents are learning to modify their habitual antisocial behavior in a residential program based on reinforcement. This approach is so successful that only 10% get into trouble again after they leave here. Good behavior is consistently rewarded. Instead of dispensing ice cream, teachers give tokens and verbal praise to a student who is behaving properly. The approval is immediate, but the tokens are saved and exchanged later for some particular reward, whatever the individual finds satisfying. Perhaps some time in the pool room. Gradually, the adolescents are weaned from tokens to independent good behavior as its own reward. If feelings of pleasure result from certain kinds of behavior, then we need an environment, a society, that encourages that behavior. The utopian ideal is as old as history. In 19th century America, it found expression in perfectionist movements.
As a child, I had been in contact with various perfectionist movements in the United States in the 19th century. I had happened to have been born only a few miles from where Joe Smith wrote the Book of Mormon. I also then had picked up notions from Henry David Thoreau about getting away from the world as it is and designing a world of your own, which is the principal theme of Walden I, and it became the theme of Walden II.
Walden II was a fictitious place. At Walden II, members produced the minimum goods to support themselves without waste, profit, or pollution. Labor was pooled. They avoided competition by sharing their land, their possessions, and their children. Since 1948, Walden II has been published in 8 languages and continues to capture imaginations.
I was just real excited by it. I wanted to save the world and create Walden IIs, hundreds and thousands of them.
It felt like a more peaceful, sane, and useful environment than I was experiencing.
I was very impressed by the lifestyle that Skinner put out in his book, the egalitarian, social, economic, political system.
I looked upon it as a piece of fiction rather than a possible realization of a non-fictional idea. I just thought it would be a very nice way to live if ever that happened.
The Twin Oaks community is a rural cooperative in central Virginia, sired by Walden II and the disillusionment of a handful of people who in 1967 turned to it as the blueprint for a better society. The casual visitor might well assume that this is just another of the many reactionary communes spawned by the turmoil of the 60s. On the surface, perhaps, but there are differences. Most of those communes have disintegrated. Twin Oaks has flourished. Membership has multiplied from 8 to 85. Ages embrace old age to infancy. Educations vary. Some stop short of a high school diploma. Others hold doctoral degrees. The community is self-supporting through its own industries and grows most of its own food. Their government, labor policy, and children's program all owe something to Walden II. But is Skinner's design the secret to their success? Or have they discovered their own way of doing things? It's now 11 years since they began their experiment, and Nova thought Skinner might like to see for himself. So we invited him in the spring of '78 to visit Twin Oaks and meet the people who thought his utopian vision ought to be taken seriously.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Hello, I'm Fred, and my daughter Deborah over there. Hi. Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks.
This is my wife Eve.
Hello.
That's Deborah. Hi, daughter.
How do you do?
Had the author lived in his own utopia, he wouldn't have been called professor or doctor. Rank had no place at Walden II. It's the same here at Twin Oaks, where they use only first names.
My wife, Eve likes to travel and she can't understand why I would ever want.
Not every visitor to Twin Oaks is given a red carpet welcome, but Fred is no ordinary guest. And equality notwithstanding, a tea party has been arranged in his honor.
There's a huge thing over in that heavy equipment building. Sculptors and artists.
The conversation eventually turned to the writing of Walden II.
Like magazine attack that is in didn't they attack? Really, it's one of the most vicious reviews I've ever seen in my... with an editorial.
Suddenly, a very vicious attack by a man named Jessup, who had written it. Jessup was so furious that, although he regarded himself as a liberal, he would have burned every copy of Walden II he could have. He
Really?
Wow. But also he makes all the mistakes, you see. I didn't know it then, but that's what I was going to be facing for a long time to come.
Twin Oaks has had its own critics, prophets of doom who said the community could never support itself. It's been a struggle, but in 11 years they've put up 5 large buildings, quadrupled their land, and developed a prospering farm. Today, their book value is close to $500,000.
Have you thought of having goats or small sheep and so on, small animals around to chew the grass away for you?
I'm an animal manager, and personally, I don't like goats.
Well,
I feel like to
either.
succeed with any breed, you have to like them. And
Yes, that's true. But lambs, the kids would like lambs, it seems to me. Lambs were nice to eat, and good heavens, they'd have a grand time here in Ontario.
Lambs are very expensive to fence in.
No, that's true. I was quite wrong, of course, in Walden II about the electric fence. It doesn't work with sheep.
Right. You have enough insulation, they'll go right through it.
I made an even bigger mistake at the Kengal breath spotted. I had them milking Herefords in the first printing, and I changed that very fast.
Well, no, that's possible. I know people that have a Hereford family cow.
They get milk out of it, do they?
Right, and a family doesn't need that much milk.
I see. Well,
A Hereford doesn't milk a lot, but they do produce enough to do it.
You don't have chickens. Is that because you have to buy grain?
We do have a few chickens. We have enough for what percentage of our chicken stuff, do you know?
Well, chicken meat we don't have except when the old layers wear out and we have stewing chickens. But we produce half our eggs or more.
And you would never think of machine raising chickens. You wouldn't.
No.
That's not humane enough for Twin Oaks.
And in terms of efficiency, I think it's worth giving up a considerable amount of efficiency in able to get closer to our own self-sufficiency.
Oh, I think so too.
I'm more interested in probably having food that I enjoy eating more than I am. It's important to grow it for me. I like growing our own food, and I think that's neat, but I won't trade I won't trade not having an avocado once a year for the fact that I can grow spinach. It's just not, to me, it's a bad trade-off.
Growing all their own food is not a major goal, but economic independence is.
What we're doing here is...
At Walden II, they made and sold furniture. At Twin Oaks, hammock making is the staple industry. Hammocks market well and don't require much capital. Production is labor-intensive and simple enough for even a visitor to learn. $30 hammocks a day are enough to maintain the community, but with more revenue, they could expand. So when their new industrial workshop is ready, they'll go into rope making, hammock chairs, perhaps even furniture. Diversity will also give members a more interesting choice of work. But why would routine production work appeal to a group of people with an average of 2 years college? We asked Bruce.
It was back in 1970, 1971 that I decided to drop out of the rat race, so to speak. I'd been working for the military-industrial complex, companies like Honeywell and Raytheon. And I looked around, decided I didn't like the way my life was heading, so I dropped out, I stopped work. My expectations in coming here were that I would find a place where I could live with people, work with people, play with them, eat, spend my whole life with them, rather than separating my life into different compartments. I also wanted to do work that I felt was more meaningful, rather than just shuffling pieces of paper around at a desk. There's no comparison in the work I do here. I mean, it's so much more varied and so much more interesting.
3 years ago, Gareth dropped out of high school to join Twin Oaks. He's now production manager of the hammock shop.
Most people find hammocks rather monotonous. Some people that work in here for large amounts of time have developed a certain things that they do to make it less aversive. We have a sound system you can listen to. We also play games, word games, and things that you can do without, using paper. I definitely think that without the entertainment that we have in the hammock shop, we wouldn't be able to get the number of hours necessary in a week. The reinforcements that we have designed is definitely crucial to the production of hammocks.
I did not specify good contingencies of reinforcement, as we call them, in work conditions, and Twin Oaks is ahead of me there. They have done something to make the conditions under which people work attractive and interesting. I was assuming, as Marx assumed, that people would contribute a certain amount of labor for the common good, but that's bad design.
John, what kind of system do we have?
As long as they do their share, members can choose the time and place of their hammock hours to suit themselves. The flexibility helps them integrate work with play, respects individual differences, and is not nearly as haphazard as it seems. Corey.
The other communes where I used to live, we would just spend hours every day trying to figure out what's the most important thing to do next. And here that's pretty well taken care of. And the system of planner, manager, government is already established. And we don't have to tear our hairs out saying, well, should we do it this way or should we do it that method or anything like that.
We took the planner-manager system pretty much directly from Walden II, but we've had to flesh it out and develop it more by using it. I think mostly Skinner just gave a general description of what the system was going to be without details of how it was going to function, and we found that we had to make up most of it, that the idea was good, but that it didn't tell us how to do things, it just gave us a basic idea.
Taylor has just begun her 18-month term of office as a Twin Oaks planner. Skinner believes that democracy is unjust because it neglects minority opinion and inefficient because it can't guarantee competent government. It's better, he says, for a community to appoint planners to make policy decisions and managers to take charge of specialized areas. At Twin Oaks, the 3 planners choose their successors and enjoy absolute authority. They are responsible for all long-term planning, but depend on the advice and expertise of the 50 managers.
I think that sometimes, at least, being a planner is really difficult, that there are very few people here who want to do it at any particular time. In fact, this time when I was chosen, there was really nobody else who wanted to do it. You're answerable to everybody. Everybody has a right, and there's an expectation that everybody will come to you and tell you what they think about how you've decided. And yet you have to make decisions. You can't say, well, that's too difficult for me, I can't decide. You're really stuck making decisions. And it's very hard to be able to be challenged and criticized when people aren't dissatisfied, and it's also almost impossible to satisfy everybody at any time.
As in Walden II, everybody is entitled to the same standard of living and must earn it by doing an equal share of the work. This is an article of faith at Twin Oaks, where they use Skinner's labor credit system to carry it out. The best incentive is not money, but the immediate reinforcement of what it will buy. So members work directly for their food, shelter, and other needs. To keep track of everyone's output, all work is credited. Skinner assumed that some jobs would be unpleasant. To be fair, they should be worth more credit. But here, the only chore that no one relishes, kitchen shift, is rotated. For everything else, they find volunteers. So an hour attending a meeting carries the same value as an hour mixing cement or picking blueberries. Once a week, everyone submits a list of the jobs they'd like to do, and the Labor Credits Committee dovetails requests with needs. The Labor Credits manager, who's lived here for 10 years, is Tamar.
The actual assignment of labor credits, doing people's weekly schedules, takes 2 people about 15 hours a week. But labor as an area uses about 50 hours a week because we do a lot of accounting and we keep on top of the budgets and that sort of thing. We calculate our weekly quota by the number of hours that managers ask to be done in a given week, and we divide it by the number of people that are here to do it.
At present, the quota is 45 hours per person each week. Roughly half goes toward income making and the rest into running the place. Cooperation rather than competition is the basis of community organization at Twin Oaks, and it underpins personal attitudes as well. Heidi.
In '74, when I finally got around to reading Walden II, I was seeing the world from a strongly feminist perspective. I was being really disillusioned with sexism and work opportunities and the way people treated each other in general. We're aware of what are the traditional male and female behaviors here, and we strive to choose the best of both of them to become more androgynous, so to speak. I learned most of what I'm doing right here from the men that I work with, not a step-by-step process learning the systems of vehicles, but by whatever breaks down.
I feel that the education that Twin Oaks has offered me over the past 10 years has been very real. And that, when I reading in a book how to do accounting is very different from actually sitting down and having the problem. You've got to figure out how you're going to spend your money and how you're going to budget it. And it's just, the consequences are right there. And if you do it wrong the first time, you know it. And next time you're going to do a better job.
What I did with Father.
Deborah Skinner's air crib was eventually donated to Twin Oaks. These days, they don't use it quite the way her father had intended. Instead, it serves to keep a child warm on chilly nights in unheated buildings. This compromise is typical of their current attitude toward his child-rearing ideas. This is Nathan. He is not yet a father, but for the past 4 years, he has earned labor credits by spending part of every week taking care of the community's 10 children. He is one of a team of men and women Twin Oaks calls metas. The children do not live with their biological parents. They spend nearly all their time together with their metas in this special children's house, which serves as their home, school, and daycare center. Babies who are breastfeeding are the only exception. They sleep near their mothers in one of the adult residences and are brought over to join the others at breakfast each morning. Because child care is rotated among different metas, careful records note every child's progress and any special problems. Praise and affection are used to reward good behavior, and anything undesirable is simply ignored, unless it's dangerous to the culprit or someone else. Harmful misbehaving is the only cause for punishment. In this respect, Twin Oaks is faithful to the Skinner model. But with other aspects, they've had to make changes. When the first children were born, they tried to follow Walden II to the letter, all agreeing with Skinner that love and attention need have nothing to do with blood ties. Natural parents were denied any special relationship with their children. But over time, serious problems developed. Parents found it hard to give up their traditional roles. The metas felt burdened by their heavy responsibility. Everyone worried about depriving the children of a primary relationship.
I think the children's part of the community is the most exciting part. It's the one thing that really would get me most involved, I think. And I'd like to know really what you're doing here and how you're doing it.
Jerry, on the left, is the mother of 2 of the community's children. And Casey is a meta and member of the Twin Oaks Child Board.
When I first became a meta almost 4 years ago, it seemed like a meta was somebody who was a group of people who were going to have primary responsibility for the children, both making decisions both in their day-to-day lives and also long-range decisions. And that's what I thought I was doing. I was supposed to think of these children as my own. And I started out doing that. And then the program went through some changes. We decided to pay more attention to that biological role. And so I got a little confused in there. It seemed like a meta started becoming more of a daycare worker, but not quite that casual. There's more involvement there because we're all living with the children and we're all living together and being close.
Would you be a meta too?
No, I'm not a meta, even though I am a parent.
And what does that mean? You feed your child, but you don't care for it?
Essentially, I don't do the daycare work with either of my children. And
now, why is that? What is your choice? Why are you not a meta?
Because working with children is not my preferred work. I'm not very creative with them, and can get overwhelmed by having...
Well, that is really a little closer to the Walden II idea, isn't it? That those who want to be with children have a chance to be, even if they're not biological parents, and have all the satisfaction out of having fun with them and seeing their effect on children.
Well, but yet the people who are metas don't really... If they have a desire or a need to be a parent, I don't think being a meta satisfies that.
You don't think that?
It's...
But supposing you had some, you could have some disease you didn't want to transmit or something like that, hereditary hemophilia or something of that kind, and you love children, might could just be a meta. It would be a great solution, wouldn't it?
It's not quite like adopting a kid. That would be closer.
No.
But it is certainly a way to be close to children without having them yourself, closer than just teaching or working in a daycare center, for sure.
In your experience, do parents naturally get the rules with the baby? Are they better than metas, do you think, in handling children?
No. We try to pay attention to, what the parent wants with the kid, but the parent doesn't just make the rules or decide what's going to happen with the kid. We have a meeting with the metas, and the parent's input is listened to a whole lot. And usually we, unless the rest of the group thinks it's so wrong what the parent wants, we do it. I think that nowadays a mother spends a lot more time with the baby than before. And I think that we help foster that relationship along a lot more than we used to.
I think that was part of Walden II. Parents, if they wanted to be with their children, could be metas, as you call them. And if they didn't, they could bear the children, or whatever biological advantage they seem to get from passing on their genes, and let those who are most competent and most experienced praise them. I think that's the way it should be.
Except we stopped feeling okay about people casually having babies unless they wanted to at least have some responsibility. A lot of it comes from the fact that the metas turn over. The metas aren't people who are going to be here forever with the kids, and the ultimate responsibility really does
well, I think
with parents.
You might argue in the long run. I don't think a psychoanalyst would agree with me, but you might argue in the long run it's better for a child to be in contact with an average or the essence of an adult rather than particular adults. And I think it's wonderful for children to have contact with a very large number of caring adults.
There's a little bunny for you, Trav.
Are you afraid of me? Oh, you are. You don't want me.
How about Dave with a little bunny?
That's terrible.
Sorry, we don't need to be laughing at you when you're all upset. Well, now when you're not crying, maybe you can stay there. That's okay. Smile.
I don't have a nice soft laugh, I know. You're complaining?
Honey.
Oh, I think you better go back to the meta.
There you go.
Sorry.
How come you all
I'm so
cranked
sorry. So sorry. If I were to redesign my childhood, I think that I would probably build it about like a Walden II. I think it would have been much better for me to have had even more contact with adults than I had. I still think that a community where the child has the chance of knowing many, many more adults who will treat him with warmth and affection and so on, that is still could be improved in that direction.
Horace Frederick Skinner was born in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania in 1904 and named for his mother, the former Grace Burris, a musically gifted and beautiful woman who became Mrs. William Arthur Skinner when she stole the heart of a local lawyer. Intellectual and awkward, he was a stern but kind father. Skinner's beloved younger brother Edward was his great childhood companion and also the favorite son. Family life was stable and disciplined, dominated by Mrs. Skinner.
My mother was the person who set the style of the house and the standards. My father managed to marry her, but only with her consent, and I think she held that advantage all her life. He would have to come up to her standards, and those, of course, were the standards I came up to, too. My mother embarked upon a campaign to get me to hang up my pajamas. I would come down to breakfast, and she would go up, and there would be pajamas lying around in the bed. She would call down to me, come up at once, hang up pajamas. so I would come up and hang them up. And this went on day after day, day after day. Well, I finally solved that problem. I wasn't responding to the aversive control at all. I solved it by building a little gadget with a hook on a string in that little closet where I would hang the pajamas, and the string passed over a nail and on over and came down in the doorway. And there was a sign there saying, hang up your pajamas. Now, if the pajamas were on the hook, that sign was up out of the way. But when I took them off at night, the sign came down in the door, and in the morning when I got up, got dressed, I started to go out, there'd be this sign there. I'd go back, get the pajamas, hang it up, and the sign would go away, and I'd walk out and go downstairs, and I didn't have to come back up and hang up my pajamas.
Skinner spent his first 18 years in Susquehanna. The town is proud of its famous son and welcomed him back one recent winter when he came to visit old friends and refresh his memory for his autobiography.
The main thing was the small-town face-to-face culture, which I see now as having been very important in my life. I think it has meant to me a realization of how important personal relationships are, which have been, of course, the things I've actually studied as a scientist.
Susquehanna is no longer a booming railroad town, but in those more prosperous times, it was a wonderful place for a boy to grow up. Young Fred played the piano and saxophone and was always inventing stories and gadgets. He loved to be outdoors, watching animals and exploring. It was this environment which he insists entirely shaped his adult personality.
I wasn't born with an inquisitive spirit or with a character trait of curiosity. I was born in an environment that just rewarded me for every little move I made, to look, to turn something over, turn a stone over, to go beyond that tree and there up in that hill and so on. It was a world full of surprises whenever you did something, and that built up in me and was carried right on through an enormous tendency to inquire, to look for things. It doesn't come from any character trait. It comes from my history, my childhood. It was the world in which I lived that shaped all of these behaviors of exploring and looking and searching.
His parents encouraged his schoolwork, but didn't commend high marks. It was expected that he would do well. A more important influence on his developing intellect was Skinner's close friendship with his favorite teachers.
Being here in this building makes me realize for the first time, I think, that what I tried to do with teaching machines and programmed instruction was to give everyone what I got from my good teachers here, Miss Graves and Professor Bowles. I got a lot of special attention. There were small classes, and even so, I think they paid more attention to me because I responded to them. And I believe that what a good program does, when presented with a good device of some kind or other, is the very best of what I got from those teachers.
There are no teaching machines at Twin Oaks. They have not consciously adopted Skinner's ideas about education. Walden II was written long before he applied behaviorism to the classroom. But as it's turned out, their approach is close to what he liked best about his own education. Just as they are raised collectively, the children are taught by many adults, some of whom were teachers before coming here. The 4-year-olds spend 3 mornings a week with Justin, trained in the Montessori method, which uses specially designed teaching aids and activities which are planned and structured. Each child has a program tailored to her own pace of learning. In the afternoon activity room, everyone participates. Here, the emphasis is more on what the children want to do. The teacher, in this instance Mickey, plays a background role, guiding discussion and encouraging free expression and creative play.
What I think is important in being with children is to create a sense of creativity an environment for creativity, an environment for curiosity, an environment for learning being something you just don't do with a teacher or in a classroom. The kids really love to come over here. I don't use punishment because I don't have to use punishment. I don't think any of us who work in the activity room deal very much with it because it's such a pleasant environment.
I think the main thing in reinforcing a child's interest and continuing concentration and development with a particular material is the experience the child gets out of doing it. If there's an exhilaration, that's sufficient reinforcement. And I wouldn't want the kids to get the idea that they need to please grown-ups to do what they're doing. The aim of the system is not to turn out little geniuses who are going to go to Harvard and have wonderful careers. What we're trying to do is to turn out happy people who are integrated into the life around them, who experience their environment in an aware way.
And we're trying to create a balanced curriculum, a curriculum that's intellectual, sensory, creative, exploratory, all the things that everybody wants for their kids.
Alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, je te plumerai. Would you like to do it too, Heather? Je te plumerai la poitrine. You sing.
Je te plumerai la poitrine.
Et la poitrine.
Et la poitrine.
Et le cou.
Et le cou.
Et la bouche.
Et la bouche.
Et le nez. Et la tête.
Et la tête.
Alouette.
Alouette.
Oh, come on, sing with me. Oh, alouette, de gentille alouette, alouette, je te plumerai. Very good. What do you want to say about that?
It took Twin Oaks the first 7 years to become financially and emotionally stable enough to raise another generation. Confidence about the future is now running high, and they feel ready to expand and diversify. They actively recruit new members, people who will view the community as a commitment, not just a nice place for a working vacation. They hope to attract a wider range of people to break their stereotype, which has always been white, between 25 and 35, unmarried and middle class. The kind of person who has had a chance to experience the American dream before rejecting it. But they still face difficulties. About 20% leave and are replaced each year, and only a quarter have stayed longer than 5 years. This turnover has been unsettling. With the exodus of most of the Walden II pioneers, attitudes have changed. Newcomers have brought with them new personal beliefs, everything from primal screaming to transcendental meditation. Unlike Walden II, Twin Oaks manages to accommodate both dissent and change while still maintaining the basic Walden II structure. But like Walden II, Twin Oaks succeeds because its members are aware of how their behavior controls and is controlled. Toward the end of Skinner's visit, members of the community gathered to talk things over with him. From the left, Josie, the only original member still here. Jerry, whose children's security is closely tied to what happens here. Chip, who edits a magazine on community living.
You're not going to fold. Is that the issue?
Oh, we're not going to fold.
No, you're not going to fold.
Just the way in which different things change. We succeed. People are all...
Henry, one-time planner and now construction manager. And Ellie, a meta and mother-to-be.
We have a fairly heavy problem with people coming and only staying a year or so and then leaving. Yeah. It would be neat if we had techniques to keep ourselves here. it's real difficult. With a world that's so mobile, we have that problem here, which Walden II really didn't address very much.
Well, it did something, I think. People ask, what is the survival value of art, music, and so on? And many people say it doesn't make any difference to a culture, but it makes a great difference, and because it prevents defection. You're suffering from defection, of course. People come, and they don't find life here interesting enough to keep them on. I'm wondering about things you could do. For example, my wife and I belong to a little play reading group. Once a month we put on a play. It's delightful. That must be an ideal kind of thing for a group of this kind, it seems to me. Do you do that? Do you put on plays?
Every planner's meeting's a play.
Here's a play, right?
But we do plays. We have folk dancing groups getting together. Most people who come to live here are reasonably clever, and they learn a job, and it's boring. And then they say, oh, I think I'll go do something else. I don't want to be a plumber anymore. I want to be an electrician now. Now I'll be a planner for a while. Now I'll be this for a while. And as a consequence, nobody ever gets really skilled at anything.
You are coming from a level where intellectual skills are probably being wasted here. And if you start in making income from the production of intellectual things, like books and works of art and music and so on, you might find you could come out ahead that way. The other thing that I sense missing, I talked with David about this, you are conducting a terribly important experiment here, and unless you get some sense of that, I think, you do lose interest in it. But this has a terrific future. You don't appreciate what you're doing, really, here. And if you did, nobody would leave. You think, this is the solution to the whole problem.
How's it happened that you have not come to live in community or visited Twin Oaks more often? Or?
Well, if I came to live, I have to get a divorce right away, because my wife doesn't believe in community. At least I don't think she does. Perhaps she's been converted since she's been here today, but it wasn't her dish of tea at all. Why I haven't come oftener, I don't know. This is my second visit only. I've been very much interested in what happened here. Perhaps I was afraid of getting too involved in the thing. I have always thought that I was doing the kind of thing that would advance a science of behavior, and from that there would be a spin-off which would be in the direction of making this kind of thing work more effectively. Now, I'm sure that the practical problems are much more difficult than I envisaged when I sat down and wrote a book. Well, I've got to experiment with your own lives. You can't get a grant from a Ford Foundation and run an experiment with people to see what sort of relations are like. The only way to do it is to get in there and do it yourself. And that's what you're doing. And I think they're going to learn a lot more, which is relevant, than I'm going to spin off in my ivory tower.
You make it feel so powerful.
Well, you are powerful.
You keep emphasizing the positive, which is great. We always seem to end up in a positive place, but we're dancing around the question of why are we perpetually first-generation Walden Tours? Why do we keep losing people? And I think the thing that we haven't mentioned yet is security. Being constantly an experiment, I think we feel, well, now, today we have this situation, this is the status quo. Now I'm beginning to feel secure with it. But if we're an experiment, then perhaps we must change when something isn't quite right.
You mean that the character of the place might change, or you didn't feel right about it?
It might and has and does.
But, well, it does. Yes, I'm sure it does. But I talked to one of your charming members here, 70 years old, and she seemed perfectly secure here. I think that the fact that you can look forward to the kind of life you will be living in the future, which it seems to me a very important thing. And I would like to see a very large number of people here uninterested in who's deciding what's to be done. I mean,
that's an interesting question.
The planner system of government actually working, it would be delightful. And it does work sometimes.
That's the point of Walden II. That's what I find missing or sort of skimped on a bit in Walden II is what happens when a group of people actually sit down to decide something. And I got the feeling in Walden II that government was reduced to a technical process. What we found at Twin Oaks is that every policy decision has a technical component, but there's also very strongly a political component. And
This is
and an emotional component.
This is borrowed from the culture. Everybody should have a part in designing the way you're going to live. But I think it's a great mistake. I don't think people in general have the competence to decide what ought to be done on these issues. Because I don't think there's any great. This is not really going back on democracy in the sense of control of the people, for the people, by the people. It's delegating control to people who know how to do the thing. One of the nice things about a small community is that you can dispense with government in the ordinary sense. It's much better for you to keep each other behaving well and not stealing and all of that by just censure and commendation rather than having a policeman walking around here. You can dispense with that. There is nobody who stands around and reinforces you or you or you or you. There is no intervening agent. The life has been designed to be reinforcing. That's the thing, you see. That's what you have here. I don't want contrived contingencies of reinforcement. I want the world to be so good. Everything you do is reinforced. The things you make are nice and you're glad you made them. The friends you have are nice and you're glad you have friends and so on. I think Twin Oaks is close to Walden II in certain ways. An effort is made to induce people to behave in necessary ways. They maintain themselves, they create the goods they consume, or at least they create some foreign exchange so they can buy the goods they need. They are very much concerned with good personal relationships. They are minimizing pollution of the environment, maximizing the good life rather than the destructive life which most people are now leading. This is all, I think, very important. It's done by arranging good reasons for behaving that way. I think this is very, very encouraging. This is as close.
The material on this video cassette is protected by copyright. It is for private use only, and any other use, including copying, reproducing, or performance in public, in whole or in part, is prohibited by law.